Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Most people know that it is way past my bedtime, and I am on the Pacific Coast. I'm on the West Coast, and Chris, you're on the East Coast, so I don't think it's past your bedtime. But
No,
thank you for being here. You're a
considering what
vampire
I did.
anyway, so staying up late is kind of your jam. But we are here specifically to talk about a book that you recently came out with, Vlada, a Dracula Tale. So we'll go ahead and talk about that really quick, but I'll go ahead and say hello to a couple people in the chat.
I have some music playing in the background. Is it too
Ooh,
loud? I thought it would set the mood.
it's maybe just a pinch lower because it's I like the mood, but I don't
How's
want you
that?
to have to yell. Perfect.
Okay. It's actually John Williams, composer of Star Wars Dracula score.
Oh. Our friend Travis says hello. We also get Bridgeport Chronicles. I take it that you probably know them, Chris. I'm telling you right now, this book is a great read. So we're going to get into that and we're going to talk about why that's a great read. And then Fable, thank you for being here. And then Elias Garcia, thank you. Thank you. And then we've also got Spider-Man History Channel. I'm a big fan of this book. Chris and Ken did an amazing job. The art is great and it's well written. Everyone should get a copy. Chris did something really cool for women-centered stories. Wow. And then hello to Real Rude 6. You got some fans here. So that's really cool to see. Let's go ahead and dive in. You tell us, for anyone who has not read this book, who wants to know about it, what's on with it.
Okay, where should we start?
Start at the beginning.
Okay, so the beginning goes back to 2013. I was at a convention that was doing a play, gender swapping some very famous characters, and it gave me an idea. And I was like, what classic monsters have they never done that with? And I'm like, they've done like adult trash movies like based on things, and there was like a Countess Dracula, but that's more Elizabeth Bathory if you've ever seen the Hammer film. And I said, has Dracula ever been gender swapped? And I went online and I looked and I could not find anything other than a play saying, oh, we're going to do a play production of gender swapping Dracula. You know what I mean? And the production was like years ago. But I couldn't find a movie, a book, a comic book, a graphic novel, anything. And I said, okay, nobody is doing this as far as I can find on the internet. I'm Google searching as deep dive as I can. I'm going to do this as a movie. And we did it as a short film, which I don't know if you've seen or if anyone's seen, called Dracula's Guest. I went on a date tonight. I took my date to the cemetery where we filmed it. And I took her a walk through the date, and I even like interacted myself as Dracula as I'm like touching her face and everything. Anyway,
not awkward at all. No, I'm just kidding. That sounds like the funnest date.
We used the short film to launch a Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter was an epic effing failure. Can we swear? It's YouTube. I'm not sure.
Oh, do you watch my show?
Like I mean, yes. How many times do you call yourself the B word? I'm just like,
yeah. Dumb bitch money. Yeah.
Epic fucking failure. We raised $800 on Kickstarter trying to raise 10 grand. $800. And nobody like helped the Kickstarter. Like the only person who helped push the Kickstarter was the director because he had an investment in it. Mm-hmm. Skip Shea. Famous filmmaker here in New England. And I was like, okay, well, movie's not going to work. We're going to do a comic book. Long story short, artists are a fickle bitch. They are either really easy to get along with or impossible to work with. Every artist has a story. It's good, it's bad, it's ups and downs. So I finally found an artist I thought was going to work for the book, named Isaiah Solaris. And we did this book right here, which you have a print of Dracula sitting with a gate and the moon behind her. So that's Isaiah Solaris. This is Resurrection of Dracula. We released this in 2016 to a minuscule amount of fanfare. she didn't think she could do the main book after the reception for this book was not hot enough, and she had to drop out. So I was left without an artist. In 2017, I found a guy named Tamoy Das over in India, who actually was one of the storyboard artists for Life of Pi. And he was really interested in doing this. And his price was perfect. But we had a lot of communication problems. And if you know anything about India, they don't have great internet reception.
Yeah. And I'm sure like the time difference too, I feel like even just the 3-hour time difference between us, I'm like, it's crazy. But, you know, I couldn't imagine trying to communicate like half a world away.
So he got 22 pages of the first book done. And then communication fell apart. And somebody else was going to do book 2 and 3. And after a year, they couldn't get book 2 even started on. So now we're in 2019. And I finally get back to Ken Hunt. Ken Hunt did this right here. If you can see it on the wall.
Show us some artwork.
Across, right there. That is the original piece of artwork Ken drew in 2017 for me for a cover. And then years later, in 2019, he said, let me finish the project I'm working on. I'm going to draw this book. This is what my page rate's going to be. I'm going to give you like a 20% discount on my normal page rate. We're going to do this, and I'm going to start it over from the beginning. And I'm like, I've already paid an artist to do the first freaking book. He's like, I don't like his artwork. I'm like, okay, that's fine. You're the professional artist who's done stuff for all these different people, including Brian Polito. So then the pandemic happens, and Kara Nicole, who is the cover model for one of the covers, convinces us to do a Kickstarter. After calling me a pussy a bunch of times, she's like, "You're gonna do a fucking Kickstarter, Chris, and stop being a pussy about it." So we launched a Kickstarter. We are about to launch the Kickstarter. Ken is going to draw like all the pages. We have maybe 3 pages drawn by the time the Kickstarter launches. After some BS with the marketing team, which was ridiculous and I lost some money on, we launched the Kickstarter. At the same time, I go back to work full time. At the same time, I have to go to the hospital for a leg infection for a week. At the same time, it's the 13th anniversary of this famous radio show I do called Radio Horror. It's not that famous. But all this shit is happening at the same time, and the Kickstarter makes its goal within like 4 hours.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And then everyone's like, "What's the stretch goal?" And I'm like, "Oh, we're gonna do this." Then it makes like $4,000 in like a day, and I'm like, "Oh, this is the next stretch goal." Then it makes $6,000. Then it makes $7,000. Then it starts slowing down. By $7,000, it started slowing down. But like a train, it just kept going until November 22nd, and then we ended it. And we hit, according to Kickstarter, like 500% of our goal.
Yep.
And can't eat corn on the cob with those teeth, somebody says. No kidding. No, you can't.
I remember.
You cannot bite somebody in the neck with fake fangs on. I know it looks romantic and stuff like that. The most your date would be able to do is stick her finger in your mouth. That's it, okay? Or bite some other body parts, but we're not that type of show to get into that conversation.
I do remember, you were telling me about the Kickstarter process, and I remember you like letting me know it was going to launch and what your goal was, because the initial goal was what, $300?
No,
sorry,
our
3,000
initial was $2,000. I didn't think we were going to do more than like 4.
I remember you like messaging me, and you're like, okay, like, we've got to hit this $2,000 goal, or $2,000 goal. We've got to hit it. And I'm like, dude, don't even worry. Like, you've got this. It's in the bag. And just like hearing the anxiety in the messages that you were sending. And then I remember like it hit like 4,000, and I'm like, dude, like, look, and you're like, I know, but it's gotta hit like 5,000. And I'm like, you were worried about hitting 3,000, and you're already at 5,000. Don't even worry about it. And then I remember getting updates about like, okay, we're at the stretch goal. We're gonna get 8,000. I've really got to get 8,000. Am I gonna get it? And I'm like, dude, you've already got your goal. So I mean, you ended up with a little over 11,000. Right?
Just about $200 over $11,000, which at the Kickstarter took $900 of my goddamn money from me. $900 in credit card fees.
Wait, who Kickstarter did? So I mean, I guess that's about what, 10%.
5% plus 3% of every credit card transaction.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine if it's like a Kickstarter like that does like $300,000, what 5% of that is.
Mm-hmm.
So we hit the mark. We sent the surveys out. Ken has like a little over half the artwork done, and we still need like 24 pages of artwork. Like a machine, Ken did 12 pages of those black and white. I have my what do you call it? Reader copy here. This is the copy I'll bring with me to conventions for people. Yeah. So he did like 10. Whoop, there it is. Yep, you got a good one right there. Love that one.
Mm-hmm.
He did 12 of these in 1 month. 1 month.
That's one every 3 days.
Something like that. Yeah. I mean, yeah. We decided to do like some shadowing here and there to give it. Yeah, that was one of the first ones he did.
Mm-hmm.
But like this one right here, he did in a week back in September.
Yeah, that's one of the first ones in this book, right?
Yeah.
Let me see here.
So, and if it wasn't for the artist, there would be no book. I mean, Ken Hunt, interior and main cover artist. The one you have is by Matt Slay, and that is, Matt Slay. That's all done in watercolors, by the way. None of that is drawn. That's entirely done with watercolors, painted. Every piece of that is painted. And he's like, what should Vlada be doing? What should Vlada be doing? And I was like, I don't want you to do Vlada. Like, Vlada needs to be on the cover, of course. She has to be, because she's the main character. She is our main character. But I want our main, semi-main female character on there. Yeah, that's Vlada and her husband, by the way. A lot of people keep thinking that's her father. It's like, no, it's her. Yeah. That's her husband. No, I'm sorry. That is her father. I'm sorry. That one is her father. The one with her husband's while she's dancing with Mark. Yep. So I said I want our main black character on the cover, and he didn't know that we decided to make Van Helsing black, because if you know anything about Bram Stoker's book, which I have a copy of right here, and I'm playing the music of Bram Stoker's, this is a special encyclopedia edition of the book, by the way. Yeah, it's got anecdotes in here about everything to do with Dracula.
And I'm sure you've read it 100 times.
Yeah, the cast of Dracula was written back in 1897. What's the primary thing of the entire cast? Very, very white. And I was like, that's fine for 1897, but in 2021, that's just not going to work for me. And I think Dracula might have decided to go dining in different parts of the world. So she needs a husband of a different flavor for some night of the week. She wants a little Chinese, a little Asian. She wants a little dark meat, a little white meat. That's why we decided to make the husbands different colors so she has a different flavor. So she has her taste of the cultures of the world, let's just say.
I thought that was pretty interesting because, to your point, you could have very easily made it like very, very white, and you could have easily made this even just gender swapping Vlada. You could have just easily made it, straight, but this book is very queer and very, very diverse, which I really appreciated. And there's a lot of diversity behind the scenes too. I know that there's a lot of female artists and audiobook that's being done. So tell us a little bit more about some of the creative team choices too.
Okay, so like I said, Matt Slay is the watercolor artist. The new team of covers, by the way, coming is going to be entirely diverse due to the fact that every person who's doing a cover in the upcoming batch are all women. Mm-hmm. Mostly women. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. Let me go over who the original cover artists were first.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So there's this CGI cover, which has Vlada and her apprentice Colleen, which is my new original character in the book. If you remember the original story of Dracula, Dracula gives his brides a baby, because what's more taboo than a woman killing a baby? Yeah. Like eating a baby. murdering a baby. For a woman to do that, that's very, very taboo, So I decided that doesn't quite work when you have 3 male husbands. Why don't we give them like a little village girl or something?
Mm-hmm.
Make it really taboo. Make it really like, I brought you this pretty thing. Play with her and dine on her. We are very ambiguous with her age. We say she's in her late teens to cover our ass on anything.
To make sure that you're not, crossing any, because I think that when it comes to like horror and things, there's lines that are expected to be crossed. But then there's things that it's like, even in a fantasy like this, there are lines that shouldn't even be crossed in a fantasy. So I'm glad that wasn't crossed there.
Right. I fought with that because I was like, well, she's going to be fine. She's going to come back later on. She's going to become a vampire. You know what I mean? And my vampires are not into sex as much as you think they are. They are, but they're not into sex like the way a lot of people understand that vampires are an allegory for rape in a way, non-consensual activity. Mm-hmm. And I said that in our story, if there's sex involved, it's only to get to what they want. Mm-hmm. They will use sex to get what they really want, which is 10 pints sitting inside you.
Yeah.
And so Colleen becomes this apprentice of Dracula, which will spin off into its own story later on.
Ooh.
So she's on that one cover. The biggest thing that was a big help to us was we got legendary artist Tim Vigil to do a cover for us. And apparently Tim Vigil hasn't done any comic book work outside of his own stuff since like 2013.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So almost a decade.
Yeah, almost a decade.
Mm-hmm.
We also have Buzz and Ken of the Living Corpse crew.
Mm-hmm.
They did the homage to Tomb of Dracula #1, which was by Marv Wolfman and Gene Colan. And then just in case I'm missing anyone else, I already mentioned Kara, Wendy. Okay, then there's also the Grave Edition, which I don't have. The Grave Edition cover has Dracula holding a girl in her arms with puncture wounds in her neck. She's just some random girl not really in the story. But that was the very first piece of artwork done for Vlada back in 2017 by Jessica Goud, who is a phenomenal artist. If you look up her stuff on Twitter, her stuff is amazing. But the new set of covers we have coming, we're keeping this one. We're streamlining it a little bit. All this flair and stuff right here is going to disappear, and it's going to be a little bit more simplified in the border. But Tim Seeley did a cover for us, which is a homage to Tomb of Dracula #55, creator of Hack Slash. And the what's his porno and space comic book called?
Money Shot.
Money Shot, which you're not going to explain what Money Shot means, but if you know anything about Tim Seeley, his cover is a parody homage. It's very, very funny. But we also have Veronica Kim doing a cover for us. She is an Asian artist from Canada. So the first person of color to do a cover. Mm-hmm. And her stuff is anime, but like really like hyper-sexual anime. It's either really like dark and gothic and bloody, or it's like I saw her post some stuff on Twitter that was probably the only place she could post it that she probably wouldn't get it banned from. And I was like, you do that? Okay, well, this is what we're going to do. And I said that I want a black bag cover for Vlada. I want top and bottom shown in my cover. I want blood dripping down the nipples over the downstairs business. You know what I mean? The
downstairs business.
Yeah. The vulva.
It's so funny that, you mentioned about the covers, or maybe this cover specifically being very like sexualized, and the characters are definitely drawn in a very sexualized way, but I like that the way that it was written is, like you said, like they're not necessarily out to like sexualize anyone else necessarily. Like that's not their end goal whatsoever, right. Which seems very true to how a vampire would actually be. And it's funny, like thinking of these vampire stories and how when you read stories like Dracula, or if you read stories like The Vampire by John Polidori, um, you there's been this shift in like modern horror, especially with vampires, where vampires have become increasingly like sexy. I don't know if that's like to me, like Anne Rice. I don't know if that was like an Anne Rice vampire type change, but it's interesting how we've seen when vampires originally came out, they were true monsters, but we've seen them sexualized, humanized a little bit more
Right.
recently.
I think both the monster vampire and the super sexually driven like angels and spikes of the world,
Mhm.
which are, I mean, as a heterosexual male, I can admit I can look at David Boreanaz and James Masters and be like, those are good looking dudes. I would kill to be as good looking as those guys. If I went gay, those would be the guys I'd go after. But I understand there's also room for like the Strigoi, vampires like in I don't know where it is, but the strain, or like for instance, in some cases, Morbius is not always a handsome vampire.
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of good looking here, but he's like this pig faced, white skin. I mean, his nose is always supposed to be drawn like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's supposed to have like the vampire bat like nose, and vampire bats have the nose pointing upwards. So we wanted in our book not just to have Vlada look like this, where she's in her nightgown and her breasts could be kind of side boob hanging out, and her butt is like really kind of see-throughing this while she's misting into Mark's bedroom. But I wanted her to be like this demonic monster. And there's a scene where she's on top of Luke and she's like hairy animal from head to toe. And yes, that is very indicative of an homage to Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola, where Gary Oldman's Dracula is raping Lucy. And I'm like, we're not going to go that far, but I wanted to have that kind of uncomfortable feeling when you're looking at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like one thing that I was because I got a chance to read it when it came in, and I was rereading it today, and like ultimately I think that like, and we've kind of had this conversation about like sexualizing female characters and like, does it work in stories? When does it work? When does it not work?
Yeah.
And I was really thinking about like the power dynamics that women have, and a lot of times, and especially in the story, like sex is a woman's way, or like sexiness is a woman's way to regain power and reclaim it. And even though like a lot of the sexualized moments in this that are like the moments that are like sexually charged, it's not, it could easily be told from that like male gaze, like I'm just going to write like a woman being sexy just for the hell of her being sexy, which is all like fun and good, but ultimately it's a way for her to like reclaim her power and to harness that power.
I'm
That's
gonna
how
write
I
all
read it
that
anyways.
down that you just said when I go to my TED talk and just be like, okay, so a smarter person than me said this because I don't know what I'm doing. No, but seriously, I've been asked that question before about like why did you make it like this and less like that, and like the one compliment, thankfully, has been nobody has complained about the way I've written it. Thankfully, you know what I mean. No, the only complaint, I don't really call it a complaint as much as maybe they didn't quite understand it, was people were expecting a comic book sometimes. At least one person was expecting, come on, get in my hand. Like this. This is Silver Surfer Requiem by J. Michael Straczynski. And I was like, there's no point at the Kickstarter that we said this was a comic book. We, in fact, said that it is very much like this. This is Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein. This is what the artist drew it on. This book right here. This amazing 50 pages of illustrations like this. But this is all Mary Shelley's novel. This is the regular Mary Shelley's novel, but with 55 illustrations by the late, great Bernie Wrightson. And it was my artist, Ken, that convinced me, why don't we do something else? Why don't we do it like this? Because we can bang this thing out in one sitting. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. So, but we have to make people aware that this is what we're doing. So they're not going into this going, oh, it's not a comic book. And I'm like, and we've had more than one person, but then they begin to understand. They're like, oh, all right. it's not a graphic novel either. No, it's more like a graphic novella because I found out a little thing by the Library of Congress because I'm having a meeting with them next Friday to copyright this whole thing. Under 100 pages, it's considered a novella. Over 100 pages, it's considered a novel. And that's from the lips of a woman who works for the Library of Congress, who is they're the government of books, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you kind of need them sometimes to be on your side to help you copyright your thing so you own it. I mean, you might have all the paperwork and all of the documentation saying that you've created this thing yourself and it's all based on what you did or who you based it on or whatever, but it needs they need to help you sometimes. Can I get this at any comic book store? Someone's asking. I'm trying to read it.
So Travis, asks, so you can get this at any comic store. I have some people that might be interested, and I'd like to share your book. So,
by the way, I'll just show this real quick.
Oh, yeah.
That is Colleen, the vampire. She's the apprentice of Dracula. I just love that image. So a couple ways to get the book. You can email me, chrisdsav@gmail.com. It's going to be in stores as much as I can get it into stores. I'm not in Diamond's distribution list right now. They want 10,000 fucking copies in order for me to get in their distribution list. I'm sorry. I don't have 10,000 copies of my book to get into their distribution.
Chris, what's your email address one more time? Is it Chris DSAV?
Yeah, chrisdsav@gmail.com. And okay, I can invoice you, or you can also buy it on the Facebook page. That has been complicated for some people sometimes. But I will invoice you an official business invoice from PayPal. So, and I have a new set of orders going in tomorrow or Monday. So I would get that, if people want to order one before the next shipment of books. Because we also have, besides Tim Seeley's cover coming, we also have a new book cover by Jennifer Leonard. Her artwork is like all over Instagram, and her stuff is freaking amazing. She just did an amazing piece of WandaVision that has got to be seen. But she did a homage to an old Konami advertisements for Castlevania from back in the 80s with Colleen and Dracula on it. And the original advertisement has some god-awful looking guy dressed as Dracula and some beautiful 80s hair metal, white-robed, giant-breasted, tan-skin-looking supermodel, as the femme fatale in the photograph for this Castlevania video game. And I was like, that's what we're gonna homage. I want to do that.
That's so cool. Thinking about like this being a comic, like that's pretty much what I was expecting, like when I first picked it up. But I'm honestly, I'm really glad that it wasn't, because when it comes to horror comic books, I think there are horror comics that do it really, really well. But when it comes to things like pacing and the mood, sometimes you need to slow down with things in order to really set all of those things to really get the horror mood. So I really love that this was not like a traditional comic book that I had to read. I had to get a little bit more into the world. There's less page turning. So I could really just I was building the world in my own head. So I guess I was more invested, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Jack, the owner of Bedrock Comics here in Framingham and the former owner of the Boston Comic Con, he said that he didn't put it down when he read it. And he's like, I put down comic books, but I didn't put your book down when I was reading it. He got to page like 34 before he finally had to stop to do something. But he didn't want to stop reading it. And he's like, that's a testament to how well it was written, Chris. It's not, it doesn't need to be super long. You took a 210-page story because Dracula is long and boring, in my opinion. I like reading it, but good God, it is 2021, not 1897.
Yeah.
And trying to reread Dracula or Frankenstein today is not easy. You need to do it in things like this, which is like a more condensed version for kids.
Yeah.
This is like 190 pages of Frankenstein. I think it's a much more streamlined, condensed way to get the basics of the Dracula story. Now, we throw in our own things in there because I couldn't just make the straight-up Dracula story. You know what I mean? I didn't want to do that because I was worried about what if I accidentally over-homage something like Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, which I didn't want to do. Granted, I'm a book, and that's a movie, so it's it's a little different, and there's a lot more leeway there. But I also wanted to heavily reference like a lot of other things, like Fright Night Part 2. It's such a huge favorite film of mine, and stars Julie Carmen is Regine Dandridge. She's the brother of Jerry Dandridge from the first movie, played by Chris Sarandon. And you think he oozes sexuality with his giant, coat or whatever, and like the way he's like, "Welcome to Fright Night."
Yeah.
For real. And then she does the same thing, and the way she talks is very like dreamy and misty. And I've always been in love with that movie. When I finally had a chance to have her on Radio Horror, I told her that my version of Dracula that I'm doing, which was still in development hell at that time, will be based on her character from Fright Night. She was overly like just felt enamored by like my dedication to that character.
Yeah, because especially if she played it that, like, it means that she played it that well in order to like really stick with you and to like give that character a lot more agency, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I just there are so many things about that character in that movie that I love so much more than Chris's portrayal of her brother in the first film. As much as I absolutely love the first film, and I've had Chris Sarandon and Tom Holland on the show, and talked to them and interviewed them as well. I'm a guy. I am so much more attracted to the female vampire than I am the male vampire. I can't help it. Again, I love Angel and I love Spike, but you know what I mean? I think Louis is a little whiny bitch in the interview with the vampire. You yourself right now are doing an interview with the vampire. I just thought that was funny. But I love female vampires so much more than I love a male vampire. Byzantium, if you've ever seen that movie.
I haven't. Mm-mm.
Oh my God, you have to find a copy of Byzantium. It's a mother-daughter vampire team. And it's directed by the guy who directed Interview with the Vampire.
Okay.
Yeah. It's very good. Kiss of the Damned, another favorite movie of mine. Female vampire in that, whatever, meets some guy. I love the fact she like chains herself to the bed in this very bondage scene to be like, okay, now I'm gonna like vamp out, but I need to be chained to the bed in order to do it because I might rip your throat out. And he's just like, okay, yeah. And then she starts changing, and he's like, oh. Tilda Swinton in Only Lovers Left Alive.
I was gonna say Tilda Swinton. Yeah, probably one of my favorites.
But I honestly love her sister so much more.
Oh, really?
So yes. I mean, even though she kills poor Anton Yelchin, God rest his soul in real life,
Mm-hmm.
But and that's why like I had to do Vlada. I had to do it like in a way that was both like as you said, it was sexually empowering, but she's also a strong female character and only uses that sexuality to get what she wants. It's not to do with sex in any way. And the same thing with like Lucas, the Lucy character, when he becomes a vampire. You know what I mean? He's like he uses his like charms to be why don't you come kiss me one last time, my dear? And he just woke up from becoming a vampire, so he's not interested in his ex-fiancée for a booty call that late at night in the cemetery. He wants 10 pints.
Exactly.
Isn't that what we all want? We just want 10 pints.
So really, so anyways, I did go ahead and I dropped your link in your email. So if anyone's interested, go ahead and send you an email. What's the price point for this? If someone was going to get this, is it different from the Kickstarter? What are they going to get?
So, all the Kickstarter covers, including the one you have, are all retired. I made a big point that once Kickstarter was over, once the end of the month had hit, because there were people who missed Kickstarter and there were people that wanted those covers, and it was just good business. I said, okay, so we're going to extend the covers until the end of February. At that point, they're done. They're over with. Unless something's damaged, I'll replace it, obviously. I mean damaged. I mean destroyed. So that's why we decided to launch brand new covers. And yeah, there's a couple of covers that people have still wanted, like Tim Vigil's, which I know I'm biting myself in the wallet doing that, but I made a promise to Tim that I would not pass Kickstarter, continue his cover. I mean, he was gracious enough to lend his artwork for it. But we have brand new covers coming. We have, like I said, Jennifer Leonard's. We have this version of Ken's cover being simplified. So to answer your question, sorry, I know it took a little while to get there. It's $20 for the book. And it's an 80-page graphic novella. You know what I mean? It's 24 pages of artwork and 55 pages of text. It's a quick read. Oh, and there's a foreword in there by New York Times 5 times Stoker winner Jonathan Mayberry, who's best known for V-Wars and Rotten Ruin. He was gracious enough to do a foreword. He does his love of vampires, and then he does his love of Chris Denmead.
Yep. I really enjoyed reading this. That introduction. It's funny that you said that because he basically names like all of the best like vampire stories, and I'm so glad that there was one that he mentioned by oh my goodness, he did Uncle Silas, Sheridan El Fanu. Is that who I'm talking about? Like he mentions that. Oh my goodness. So anyways, he basically mentions like all of my favorite vampire stories. So I just thought that was so cool. And I really feel like this book is an homage definitely to Dracula, but to like all of these other great stories too. So I thought that was incredible.
And he mentions in here, of course, Tomb of Dracula, which we've done a couple of homage covers with Tim most recently. And it's always really difficult to talk about because Tomb of Dracula, which I have buried over here somewhere. Oh, I actually have right here. So this is the Marvel Tomb of Dracula action figure. Very rare and hard to find now because they haven't done one of these in a while. Wait till Disney puts them in a movie. With Blade coming, it could happen. I had Gene Cullen on my radio show about a month before he died, back in the late 2000s into 2010. And he was, again, another influence for me to do this book. Just to have Dracula like take no shit from somebody. You could also say that comes from like Christopher Lee, like somebody mouth off to him. He wouldn't kill them. He wouldn't bite them. He just fucking slapped them in the face. Like, get out of my way. Watch any of Christopher Lee's movies. He took no shit from anybody.
Yeah.
And then I had years later Marv Wolfman on the show, and he was the writer of the Tomb of Dracula. So it was great to see Jonathan mention those in there. And then he also mentions Twins of Evil. And if you've never seen Twins of Evil, it's about these twin girls who come to live with their uncle, played by Peter Cushing, best known as Grand Moff Tarkin in Star Wars, and Van Helsing in a lot of the, or Frankenstein in the Hammer films. And he's a like uptight, button to his chin priest, and they're like twin teenage girls. So they're into boys and sex and things like that. One of them becomes a vampire. The other one, the uncle doesn't believe that her sister is becoming a vampire. And it gave me the idea to do something in the next story because as much as I love Twins of Evil, I loved, and somebody else loved Twins of Evil so much. I don't know if you knew this. Hugh Hefner saw Twins of Evil, and that gave him the idea. He's saying, you know what's never been in my magazine before? Twins.
I did not know that.
Yes, Twins of Evil. The girls from Twins of Evil were the first twins to ever appear in Playboy nude.
So let me go ahead and ask this really quick, just because I'm thinking about it. What is your least favorite vampire story, and why is it Twilight? I'm just kidding. It can be whatever
I'm not going to say Twilight because it's so fucking easy to shit on.
Yeah, it's very, very easy.
And there's a lot of reasons that we don't need. Me and you will have a whole goddamn show about Twilight. When the revival of Twilight comes back, we will educate young motherfuckers about why Twilight's so bad someday.
The thing that I do have to say about Twilight is I feel like, as someone who loves alternative music a lot, the soundtrack for Twilight was so much better than it needed to be.
That's like saying the soundtrack to Queen of the Damned is better than the movie.
Oh, it really, especially thinking about what it did to... That was the franchise killer, to be completely honest. Like, that could have been an incredible franchise, and the soundtrack was so darn good for me, like, being in, like, middle school, high school at the time. Yeah.
So to answer your question, I don't think there's one particular vampire movie I absolutely hate and why. I just think there are ones that are just really badly done. Vampire Academy with the alias girl, what's her name? Jessica Jones.
Jessica Alba.
No,
Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones. Yeah. Sorry.
Kristen Ritter. It was like Clueless meets vampires. It wasn't for me. I mean, I don't know a lot of people who like put it there as the greatest vampire movie ever made. I know people have problems with Once Bitten, and we've covered Once Bitten on the Vampire Movie Minute podcast that I've done. And we even have brought up to the actor in the scene that a lot of people have really big problems with, being like, what was with this scene? And they're like, it was the 80s. They thought it was funny. The director said, all right, everyone, get your clothes off and get in the shower. We're doing this.
We've got to, sorry.
But if a vampire movie has nothing but bloodshed and no plot, I hate that.
Yeah, because that's easy to do, right? Travis wants to know, what are your thoughts on Alien 3?
That is a very random question because it has nothing to do with vampires.
Was not prepared whatsoever for that.
I mean, I would love to have seen the movie they were supposed to make, which is, I don't have it with me, I think. Okay, I'm gonna make this very easy. Go buy on Audible the Alien 3 audiobook that is the original script for Alien 3. It's so much better.
And they made a comic book, right? They made a comic book of it too.
Yep. It was written in a way of like, oh, we haven't signed Sigourney Weaver's contract yet, so she's like hurt in sickbay until the end of the movie. Oh, Sigourney Weaver can do her scenes. And I've had Michael Biehn on the show, and he's in the audiobook, and he's talked about Alien 3 probably to a nausea, and I didn't want to bring it up, but I was just like, hey, so the Alien 3 audiobook, and then he went into a thing about Alien 3 saying how much he hated what happened. So that was a nice way of me not bringing up the movie, but he did anyway. Overall, I think Alien 3 is an absolute mess, and it's like the Terminator Dark Fate of the series. Are you fucking kidding me? They spent the entire movie saving that kid just to kill him in the next one?
One other thing that I want to talk about, because you and I
basically... glad he asked that question, he said.
Yeah. Very good one, Travis. Thank you. You and I initially met, or you and I initially got more acquainted because you invited me to be on a podcast that you do about hack slash, and that's among several of the podcasts and ventures that you do. So give me like a roll call of all the things that you currently do, because you do a lot.
Yeah, I saw you on Twitter, and I was like, this woman is so incredibly beautiful, and she knows so much about comic books. Those things, hand in hand, I want her on my show when I can, just to be like, I can talk to her about comic books, and she's insanely knowledgeable based on these Twitter posts, and she's just like, oh, she has tattoos as well. Oh my God, I'm just falling more and more in love. So it was the perfect package to be, the super geek girl. And then, by the way, your podcast the other night with Mars talking about, you don't want a super geek girl in your life. Do you know what we do? We spend thousands of dollars on comic books.
Yeah, we spend a lot of money on, we spend that dumb bitch money, and we'll get into arguments about all the comic book things. So
goddamn funny when you guys are talking about, you don't want a super geek girl in your life.
You really don't. I think that everyone thinks that they want.
Because they treat you trophy-wise. Look at the hot thing on my arm.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone, I mean, not that I'm a big-titted goth girl, but everyone wants a, they're a goth girl in fishnets, until you realize that
they're like Cassie Hack.
Even when we're pretty low maintenance, we're still pretty ridiculous. So what other than what are some of the podcasts that you do?
I want to get your compliments out of the way about your comic knowledge. Okay, so Goth Girl Horror is the Tim Seeley hack slash podcast I do with a fantastic co-host who I cannot believe puts up with me, named Charlie Lux. She is adorable and so much fun. She was a backer of this Kickstarter. We did a review recently of the Cassie toy, which is fucking horrible, by the way.
Oh,
Good
no.
God. And by the way, I'm allowed to say that on any podcast. Tim has told me, just keep that off social media, but your podcast is your podcast, Chris. I was like, thank you, Mr. Seeley.
But go out and buy it, right?
Well, no, we did not say that. And anyway, new episode that comes out tomorrow. Then I do another comic book podcast, 2-part show called Splash Pages. It's whatever the topic of the week is, usually related to what's going on in comic books. Coming up, we have Justice League New World Order coming up, because as I keep putting it, and my department manager, podcasting network manager has pointed out to me, you haven't seen the movie yet, Chris. You can't say that. I say is a better story than the Snyder Cut coming. Wah, wah. Which, if you watched Tom and Jerry a couple days ago, you could have seen the Snyder Cut. But
yeah.
Anyway, so we do that. But the podcast I do following it, that I am actually the host of, is the Spectacular Spider-Man Salvusima era podcast, which is, if you don't know what his artwork looks like, his artwork looks like this. Yeah. And it is like you think Todd McFarlane drew some dark fucking comics? Sal Buscema's stuff was dark as hell. There's an issue coming up involving like the demons in New York during Inferno, or a precursor to the Spider-Clone saga, or an issue where Spider-Man's having some type of nightmare dream, and Glory Grant, J. Jonah's secretary, is turning into a werewolf, and she and her lover murder Spider-Man and Jameson, and it's just like bloody as hell. And then they wake up at the dream. Or a few issues later, we deal with like, okay, so Vermin the Rat Man is like this experiment by Baron Zemo, the guy that's going to be in the Captain America TV series coming up in about a week. And so the reason why he's like all fucked up the way he is because Daddy came into his bedroom some nights. And this is like, holy shit, where are we going with Spider-Man in this story? Yeah. So
Very
the
cringy.
darkness in this story. And that story is called The Child Within, because it deals with like Harry's abuse by Norman Osborn, Peter growing up without his parents in his life because they died in a car accident. Of course, he's like a child in his Spider-Man costume in his fever dream because he's hallucinating due to goblin stuff. And so he's a child in his Spider-Man costume, and you see in the doorway with what looks like dirt dripping off their bodies, his parents being like, honey, we're here. And it's like their skeletal hands are coming out from the shadows, and you're like, oh my God, what the fuck is going on?
Like, what Spider-Man comic am I reading?
And I was like, I have to do a podcast about this comic book because it's that fucked up and dark. I love it.
If someone were to find these... Oh, sorry, you've got more.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go on with the next one.
Okay, then I do the Hammer show, which is done with Roe, where we cover all the Hammer movies. That's where all my insane Hammer love comes from. Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing. Boy, we say their names enough on that podcast because there are so many Hammer movies.
Is there like a drinking game yet? Like every time you've got to take a shot?
There could be. Somebody asked a question. What is the best vampire movie that you would recommend that isn't well known? My list, my vampire film's like right over here. I'm like looking. I would say maybe Kiss of the Damned. It's directed by a woman. She like left the industry after this movie came out. I don't know why, but one of the main characters from the TV series Heroes is in it. I really adore this movie. I know it's not like the greatest vampire movie ever made, but if you go to the dollar store right now, you'll find it in their like DVD bins, because I found a dozen copies of it recently.
Oh my God! You should give it away with the Vlada Kickstarter.
Let me tell you, if there were conventions right now, I would buy all dozen copies just to be like, you got to watch this vampire movie. You want to see a vampire chain herself to the bed in her underwear just to prove to her lover that she's really a vampire, but to protect him, she I'm going to chain myself to the bed. Ah.
If you had to do these are the maybe 3 essential vampire movies, what would you say?
The 3 essential vampire movies, and then can I also give you the 3 essential vampire books or comics?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
3 essential vampire movies. The Lost Boys, I think, is too much of a given.
Yeah.
So that's off the table. Like hitting on Twilight's off the table. Yeah. I think Bela Lugosi's Dracula, which, by the way,
Of
there's a
course.
graphic novel now out by Legacy Comic Books. Legacy Pictures, best known for putting out the Dark Knight trilogy, has a line of comic books now, and they're taking the actors from the movies and putting them into books of the original writing from the people who wrote them. So for the first time ever, Bela Lugosi and his cast of characters are in the Bram Stoker's written story.
Nice.
Yeah. So, okay, anyway, so Bram Stoker, the original Dracula from the 1930s. Oh, man, this is really hard to think about.
Sorry, I put you on the spot there.
No, it's totally fine. I'm just, Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter is so much fun to watch. It's not dumb. It's not boring. It's got Carolyn Monroe in it, and she's beautiful in everything she's ever in. And this guy is like this swashbuckling vampire hunter. He's like the James Bond of vampire hunters. And then the third one, I'll go with easy one, Blade, just because I think it's so kick-ass. I think the music is so amazing. Obviously, the beginning of that movie, but it's just so stylized. And I knew going into that movie it was based on a comic book because I had read Blade comics prior. I didn't read the one from the 70s, but I knew him from the Midnight Suns Ghost Rider comics. And I had watched 90s Spider-Man cartoon, and Blade was on the 90s Spider-Man cartoon. And I'm like, people don't remember him on the 90s Spider-Man cartoon? That was only like 2 years prior to this movie. People are like, what do you mean it's based on a comic book? but so then for my three favorite books, The Vampire Memoirs by Tracy Byery. She just came on my radio show. I read this book cover to cover over and over again. It's about a female vampire that's 1,600 years old. So it goes from the year 963 AD to 1988 when the book is about the time the book's written. And I tracked her down on Facebook finally and had her on my show. And we might be collaborating on something coming up.
That's so awesome.
It's like the woman I look up to for like why I wrote Vlada. You know what I mean? She's like the inspiration.
What's the name of that book one more time?
I might have a copy of it. I can flash it. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, you got it.
Oh. Okay. Oh, yeah. So there's my.
Yep.
Okay. So this is The Vampire Memoirs. Mm-hmm. By the way, only read this book. Never, ever, ever, ever read the sequel. We've even talked about it on the podcast, on the radio show, and I even tell her my problems with the sequel, and she 100% agrees with me. And I'm like, this is so dumb. I don't even want to get into it here, but there's a plot point in the sequel that drove me insane, and I pointed it out to her, and she was 100% behind me on it. Like, you could actually tell a creator how much a plot sucks, and then her agree with you felt so good. Okay, then there's another book called Piercing the Darkness. It's from Catherine Ramsland. She wrote the biography of Anne Rice, and then she did a deep dive into the underground, real-life vampire culture. Like people who think they are vampires, energy vampires, or drink the blood, or sexual, whatever you believe in. I'm not getting into that here. That's totally fine. But I have been to the Vampire Ball in Salem twice with people who are like immersed into this vampire culture a little bit more than I am. We did like a energy ritual, and we all dressed up in our gothic formal wear, and I wore my stuffy tie. My date, had the cleaving, and just beautiful. You know what I mean? It was a dream to do this with, to go to this and interact with people like just immersed into this lifestyle, and not just culture or play acting, but some people who were like hardcore. Yeah. Mm-hmm. A little bit of a high ticket price. They tried to do it last year. Unfortunately, obviously, that was not going to happen. Hopefully, it can come back this year. We'll see what Biden's plan's like in May. Yeah. You and your boyfriend, partner, whoever, need to fly from where you are on the West Coast over to the East Coast if it happens, and join me for a night of doing this. It is so much fun.
Oh, goodness.
And then the third book I would have to say is, no joke, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, I think is an amazing book, The movie is fucking terrible.
Okay, I haven't read the book, but I tried to watch the movie and just absolutely could not.
Don't worry about it. The book reads like textbook, but you throw vampires into significant events in Abraham Lincoln's life. Like, you read the book, Seth Grahame-Smith like researched Abraham Lincoln. Like, okay, Lincoln did this, Lincoln did that, Lincoln was here, Lincoln was there. Oh, but along the way he fought a vampire here and there and there. You know what I mean? Just, by the way, that vampire character in the movie, played by Tony Stark's dad, whatever his name was, bigger part in the book, by the way. Turns Lincoln into a vampire at the end of the book. When he gets shot by John Wilkes Booth, he saves his life, turns him into a vampire.
Makes so much sense.
Yeah.
One of my favorite, I don't even know whether I would really call it like a true vampire story or movie, but possibly one of my favorite just all-time movies is What We Do in the Shadows. Like,
yes.
I feel like that I absolutely love Taika Waititi so much, and What We Do in the Shadows, I think, is, like I said, one of my favorite movies. Not even just like a vampire movie. And the series, I did not have high hopes for the American series. I thought that it was great. I really enjoyed the series. I didn't think I was going to like it, but I did.
I love the bushes outside the house are his wife.
His wife.
And I love the episode they go before the Vampire Council and show that the TV show is in the continuity of the movies. The Taika Waititi's there, and Tilda Swinton's there, and Blade is on Zoom like we are. And I was just like, everything I love about it. So what's funny is that the Vampire Movie Minute podcast, which is in the middle of Life Force right now, which is the vampire in space sci-fi movie with the girl who's naked 19 minutes of the film, and just beautiful, directed by Tobe Hooper. Canon Films, that explains everything, people. After we're done with that, we're going to take a break and we're going to do What We Do in the Shadows 5 minutes at a time.
Nice.
Because we've been stuck in the 80s for 3 films: Lost Boys, Once Bitten, and Life Force. And I was just like, okay, also, every one of these movies is super hypersexualized, whether you're into dudes or chicks. I mean, the Countess from Once Bitten is a former Playboy Playmate of the Year, and Lost Boys is nothing but good-looking guys, Keith or Sullivan. And, Life Force has a chick naked all the time in the movie. We're going to do something that is not hypersexualized. That's What We Do in the Shadows.
Yep, for sure. And man, I could go on about What We Do in the Shadows, but even the show, I am a
podcast when we do it then.
I'm a huge fan of Matt Berry, and just hearing him go, but
I love it when Taika Waititi's like, so imagine this is like the Drapes, and he's like, I'm checking to see if the sun's down. It's down. It's okay.
It's okay.
And I'm like, people wonder, why did this guy direct the Thor movie, and now he's directing the next Thor movie? Watch What We Do in the Shadows, people. If you really have no idea why Marvel went the way they did, trust me, by the way, it has to do with politics I don't want to get into. If you know who Ike Perlmutter is, then that explains it. The whole debacle with the Inhumans. But watch What We Do in the Shadows. You will understand why Kevin Feige was like, Thor needs help badly.
And honestly, like, in my opinion, and maybe it's just because I'm biased because I love Taika Waititi, but seriously, Thor Ragnarok is probably, it's one of my favorite out of like all of the Marvel movies. It's got to be like, at least, it's probably my favorite.
Right. And then, that whole scene with him and Doctor Strange is so small, but it was everything I wanted. You know what I mean? Do you even have a computer? No. What for? Or he refills the beer.
Yeah. All right. So we've been here for about an hour. I do want to go. Any last thoughts or anything else that you'd like to say? I mean, obviously, like, I think it goes without saying that, like, people need to go and buy this. Go ahead and drop an email to you.
You can go to, like I said, Vlada a Dracula. If you don't want to send me the email and do the invoice, you can buy it on Vlada a Dracula. Vlada. Oh God, what is the actual name of it? Hold on a second. It's Vlada a Dracula Tale on Facebook. So it's at Vlada Graphic Novel on Facebook as well. If you want to search how it is on Facebook, there's a store there with links to all the covers on sale. You can buy them that way. Just warning you, it's pretty much like print on demand, so you got to give it a little while for me to print out the books. Printing time takes 2 weeks, people. So you put the order in today, you're not getting it for a couple weeks, and then it's going to be another week to ship it to you. I don't keep copies here. I'm going to keep copies here eventually, but right now it's literally like printing as the orders are coming in.
It's totally worth the wait, though.
Yes, and I will probably, with Biden's check, maybe just buy a bunch of copies to keep in storage.
There you go.
I mean, what else are you gonna do with Biden's check other than pump it back into your own economy? Chris, I have a question.
Comics,
Are those real
comics
vampire
and weed.
teeth? No, these are not real vampire teeth. These are actually done by I don't have the comic books with me now, but Captain Horror Show Jack, he made these custom things. I'm missing a front tooth, so I wear a piece, and then he did a little extra thing to fill in right here.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a full set of teeth when I put the fangs in, and I don't look like a hobo. I'm very self-conscious about my teeth, and I'm getting an implant soon, thank God, so I can have a full smile again. But he did these set, and I have a backup set right here for when I finally get my implant put in. I can put my regular fangs back in. Mm-hmm. They're not real. I did have a friend of mine date a girl who did have real fangs surgically implanted into her mouth. Yeah, she has more money than God, I found out. And they're not as long as mine, but she basically had like fake canines put in. And then she's like, and he's always worried about what's gonna happen when we're in bed, and I'm doing it. I'm just like, whoa, I don't need to know anymore.
You think there'd be a way to unscrew it or just put an eraser tip on him or something?
It was the funniest conversation to have over dinner while we're out in a restaurant when she brought this up, and he was like, him over here was worried about. I'm just like, whoa, stop. I love you guys, but I don't need to know anymore about that. They do look very real. Captain Horror Show Jack on Facebook. Tell him Dr. Chris sent you. Because we're in the middle of the COVID pandemic thing, he is. I think he's still making fangs. What he does is he will ship you a kit, into your mouth for X amount of time. He sends you instructions, and then you pull it out. It hardens up pretty fast. You put it back in the package. You ship it back to Jersey. He makes the mold, and then he ships you the fangs. It's the way he was doing it prior to the pandemic. I think he's still doing it now during the pandemic. I'm sure he's got all sorts of safety protocols in place. I don't quite know what I'm sure he's got some type of solution, because you're sipping him your spit too, you know what I mean, with that stuff in there. If anyone's been to the dentist, they give you, during the pandemic, do you know what they put in your mouth before they start doing whatever they're going to do? Hydrogen peroxide.
Oh, well.
Yeah. They have you wash your mouth out with hydrogen peroxide, because that apparently kills any trace of the virus immediately. It's not a cure of the virus. They're not saying that, but they're saying any trace of the virus in your mouth, it kills it, because it's hydrogen peroxide. It kills everything. Everything bad. So yeah, Captain Horror Show Jack. Totally check him out. He's amazing. He's got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and he does a live auction every once in a while selling Godzilla stuff. He's a huge Godzilla fan, and we all know what's coming at the end of the month.
I'm rooting for Godzilla, not Kong.
Yeah,
I know that they're going to do
what did King Kong do?
Yeah,
throw his poo.
They're not going to. I know that they're not going to do the Batman versus Superman thing. Your mom's name is Martha. I really want them to, though, at the end, but. I know they're not going to team up and fight whatever bad person, but I know in deep down in my heart that Godzilla's going to win.
I don't know if you were doing your channel at the time when BVS came out, but did you happen to mention that the real reason Batman versus Superman happened is because Batfleck banged Superman's mom in Hollywoodland?
I did not know that.
Diane Lane plays George Reeves' lover in Hollywoodland, and Ben Affleck was George Reeves in Hollywoodland.
And so it all came together.
Superman's mother in the DC animated cinematic universe. And I was like, that's the real reason there's Batman versus Superman. Superman found out Batman banged his mom.
Well, Chris, I want to thank you for being here. It's been like a long time coming because like we pretty much got to chat on the podcast that you do, the Goth Girl Horror with about hack slash, but it's been cool to have you over here
Yes.
on this side of things and do it live. So thank you so much, and thank you to everyone in the chat who's here. I hope you all have a wonderful night, and I really, really hope that you're all able to get a copy of this because it was really, really damn good. So.
Yes, definitely. And thanks everyone for tuning in. And Bridgeport Chronicles, by the way, in case you were wondering who they were, they're he's an independent little comic book as well.
Oh.
Yeah, there's like 2 issues out. The second issue is on Kickstarter right now, and the third issue will be at some point.
Nice. I'll have to check Bridgeport. I'll have to check you out.
Yeah. Okay. And you will have to come on for What We Do in the Shadows when we come back with that after Life Force is finally over.
Yes, please and thank you.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, have a good night, and stay safe out there, and go buy some Dracula books.
Yes, Vlada, A Dracula Tale.
Vlada, A Dracula Tale.
Message me on Facebook or on the Twitter for it.
You got it. Bye, folks.
Bye, everybody.